understood what was going on.
He is really nice. He is.
Yep, it helps because they have they don't use hymnals. They just have they have an electronic billboard. It's interesting.
Great guy.
So we're here for a second, and I'll introduce you.
Me too.
Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much to everybody who's out here for the Sterling Theology on Tap. And thank you to everyone that is watching via live stream or will soon be watching via live stream. Very soon. Watching. We are so happy to be here, to be together, to be able to do it safely, and most of all, to have a very special speaker today. But before we begin with our whole program, let's begin as we should live in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit. I pray that you be with all of us, that you guide us, that you send a spirit of peace and hope to each of us. We pray that you bless Bishop Burbidge today as he speaks to us. And please bless all of us to be receptive to the message that he has, the way that he proclaims the gospel of Jesus Christ to us. We ask all of this, Jesus, in your most holy name. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, so before we begin, I just want to share, this is the Sterling Theology on Tap. We have several Theology on Taps that happen throughout our great diocese in different regions. And some of the parishes that kind of work together to plan this one. One of them is Frassati out in western Loudoun County, right? Like this group. They're based out of St. John's in Leesburg, and they have a Bible study this Friday, or every Friday, I think, at 7 p.m. So please check that out. They also, this one is on discernment and prayer. Also, on Saturday, this Saturday at 4 p.m., they're going to have a young adult hangout at a brewery. I think it's like Wheatland Farm Brewery. So 4 p.m. on Saturday, be sure to check out them. You can meet Sabrina. She's in charge of that group. So come talk to her if you're interested in that. St. John Newman also has virtual Bible studies on Tuesdays at 7:30. And Wednesdays, they have a study with Father Michael where they go through the scriptures of the week. You can go check out that table over there. I think James is kind of one of the people, and he can direct you to other people that also lead that group. St. John Newman. But without further ado, I want to welcome our speaker. He was born in Philadelphia and went to St. Charles Borromeo Seminary. He was ordained a priest of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia in 1984. In 2002, he was ordained an auxiliary bishop of Philadelphia by Pope John Paul II. And in 2006, Pope Benedict XVI named him the 5th bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Raleigh. He was installed in Raleigh in 2006, and on October 4th, 2016, he was announced by Pope Francis as the 4th bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Arlington. Please join me in welcoming Bishop Michael F. Burbidge.
We okay? All right. We okay? All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to get a little feedback here, it sounds like, Nero. Should I use that mic? Or, because yours was fine. How are we doing? All right. So I'm getting nervous, like with this live streaming we're doing with all the masses now. People can mute me when they want to, so I hope they're not muting me tonight. All right. Just real quickly, everyone, thank you. It's really a great joy to be with you, and I hope tonight is more of a conversation than a lecture. I really, always think it's a great gift that God gives me to gather with the young adults of our diocese. And so I hope a big part of our evening tonight would be just a dialogue and a conversation, if that's fine. It was interesting, one of the blessings in my life, as Neeru mentioned, is I've been named the bishop 3 times, right? As an auxiliary bishop of Philadelphia, and then as the bishop of Raleigh, and then Arlington, and each by a different pope. So I've had the great privilege of meeting them on those occasions after I've been named, Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict and Pope Francis. And just as you all know, sometimes people ask me this question about becoming a bishop in the Catholic Church. It's very different than most denominations. In other denominations, bishops are interviewed, they volunteer, they can offer their name, but in the Catholic Church, you do not volunteer, you do not offer your name, and you don't even know you're a candidate. But the Church has a process in which they, investigate and ask a lot of people a lot of questions, and somehow, some way, through the work of the Holy Spirit, you are just told you are a bishop. So I was a happy priest in Philadelphia one day, and life was going great, and I get a phone call, and my assistant said, there's this archbishop from Italy who wants to speak with you. I'm like, really? And the archbishop gets on the phone and says, Father Burbidge, I have good news for you. The Holy Father has named you a bishop. So you just say yes. And the phone call lasts like 2 minutes, and your life is forever changed. And so in 2006, when another archbishop got on the phone and said, Bishop, I have good news for you, I went, oh no, here we go again. And it's like, I named you the Bishop of Raleigh, just say yes. But I'm sure you're understanding this in your own life. Actually, it's really good advice. Just say yes. And what he was saying in that statement, I really came to understand, was this is beyond you. The Holy Spirit is at work, and this is God's call. So not only did you promise to say yes when you were ordained, it's in saying yes that we will find our peace and our sanctification. And I think we all know that in our own lives, don't we? That you ever notice when the life gets a little chaotic and life gets a little difficult and confusing, usually we're trying to impose our will. Because you've decided that it must be this way and it must happen at this time, and life gets chaotic. But when you surrender and say, Lord, this is all in your hands, just lead me to wherever you want to be, usually that's when the freedom and the peace and the serenity follows. So I'm praying for all of you tonight, my young friends, that you will know God's holy will, you will trust God's will, you will surrender and say yes, and that peace will follow. I prepared a talk this evening way in advance just on social media and communications, how that is being used and must continue to be used in the life of the church, and certainly how that impacts your life. But what I decided to do was just to truncate that a little bit, maybe cut it in half, because I think there are 2 other topics that may be on your minds today and that are certainly worthy of our dialogue. Certainly as a nation, having gone through an election and where we're at this period in time and how that impacts us as Catholics, I think is worthy of a discussion this evening. And also today, many of you probably know that the Holy See, Rome, issued the Theodore McCarrick report. Was a 2-year investigation on the patterns of Theodore McCarrick, how he advanced in the church, and what has happened. So I would like maybe also to address those 2 issues briefly, and I'm sure that there will be some follow-up questions and answers to those topics too. Okay? Is that okay? Good plan? All right, good. I need my glasses for this part. And I wanted to just speak with you a little bit about a topic I addressed. I did it as a pastoral letter to the diocese. If you want some help sleeping at night, you might want to get a copy of that, and it might help you to rest a little bit. But it was entitled, "In Tongues All Can Hear, Communicating the Hope of Christ in Times of Trial." And I think we would all acknowledge that these have been challenging times for all of us. In the midst of a pandemic that has radically changed not only the way we worship, but the way we live. And also the use of social media. I'd like to speak to you tonight about how you can grow spiritually through this pandemic and find abundant blessings in your service. Let's just talk a little bit about communications in general. I know that most of you, of course, are very active on the internet, on social media, and you're not just casual users. You're also using it in your professional life and are keenly aware of the benefits and of the challenges of social media use. And the church must be too. What are the blessings that allow us to use appropriate social media means, and what are its challenges? I think where you are in life, my dear young adults, you have a maturity level that has helped you at this point in time to understand that you have great potential to create positive change in the digital world. But in order to do so, you must understand the balance that is needed in your life. The balance of using technology, engaging in social media, and also of one-to-one engagement. And you, however, will continue to grow in that understanding. You know, talking about the balance, our seminarians, the guys who are studying to be priests, one of their years, and they're mostly young adults, one of their years is called a spiritual year. And it's away from academics, so that they can really have an intense discernment of spiritual life and human formation. But one of the aspects of the spiritual year is there is no social media. So you're allowed to use social media for 2 hours a week on Saturdays. Now, most of these seminarians are like all of you. They've come from college and from the workforce and all those things. And the idea of having to give up social media for 9 months is something they believe will be impossible to do. Within a month, so many of them have said they have never felt so much freedom. They're no longer controlled by the constant need to be checking the phone and responding to messages. I'm not suggesting you go on a social media fast for 9 months, but I am suggesting that we understand the balance that is necessary. We are in control of social media. Social media is not meant to control us. Just how we got here, modern tools of communications really need to be understood within the context of when it came about. Prior to the digital age, as we call it now, news and other important information was not directly accessible by just anyone. It was first filtered through the news media. The ability, for example, of a president to speak directly to the American people, for instance, was rare at one point in our history. That's why the State of the Union address was so important. It wasn't just an opportunity for the president to set an agenda. It was also one of the few opportunities you had to watch him without the interruption or the editing of a news producer or editor. Digital media has changed the role of news media. Public officials are able to speak with us directly through social media, YouTube, and our email boxes. We have to remember that this concept is still in its historical infancy. We are still learning how to use these tools and how much we want our lives to circulate around them. And as such, and this is where we have to be a bit critical, the news media has changed. And national outlets devote far more time to editorialize content where the host is analyzing the news and telling us what it means. This, of course, is where their opinions come into play. They still play a critical role in transmitting the raw news, but we can get some of them without them. So as the analysis and synthesis of the news becomes more dominant in national media, more time was devoted to how we differ rather than focusing on what's happening and how we relate. The split between Republican and Democrat widened. The split between left and right widened. The split between the wealthy and the needy widened. And the divide between people of difficult races has widened. Social media, unfortunately, has not helped those gaps to close. They have widened us as we see others less as people and more as the representation of what we don't understand. So a couple of lessons there, right? The one is, as young adults, to be critical, to be thinkers, to be intellectual, not to get all your news from the social media and from the headlines that you read, but rather to be informed. And that requires on your part an in-depth understanding of issues of our day and time. And so please don't give up on that. You're all, I am sure, very gifted, intellectual, successful people. So apply those gifts you have until how you receive the news and how you inform your opinions. It's very sad to me, when I hear people giving their opinions, whether it be on our nation or about our church, and they just sound like a soundbite. They just sound like a quote that everyone's repeating on certain outlets, whatever outlets you choose to watch. As Catholic Christians, especially in issues as it relates to the church, we must be critical thinkers. The division of social media. So as time goes on, the use of social media increases. We get pushed into corners and categorized based on what we think and how we feel, rather than who we are. Social media companies get a sense for what we buy, our hobbies, our interests, our religion, and then we are fed that which reinforces what we think. In the case of political content, the divide widens when we don't even see convincing arguments from the other side. Most of what we see only stresses how right we are and how wrong the other person is. So one of the tricks that I do to put this little lesson into practice is in the morning, I like to exercise a lot. You do like a treadmill or elliptical and things like that. So one of my tricks is that I usually turn on the channel that I know will most upset me, because the views are very different than what I expect. So it serves two purposes. One, it gets the adrenaline going, and before you know it, you've been on the elliptical for 45 minutes, right? So that's a great thing. But the other thing is, it helps you to hear how other people are approaching the same issue. And that's very important, because you at least, in order to engage people and to have a discussion with them, you have to be informed of where that thinking is coming from. Well, how can you do that if you only watch one channel, or you only read one newspaper, or you only go to one social media insight, all reinforcing how right you are? Then the engagement, the dialogue, the evangelization that we need to do will be limited. All right, so that's a suggestion. Do not just fall into those things that tell you how right you are and how wrong others are. And so we know what this has created. This has illuminated a human reality that social media has caused us to forget. We cannot lose our friendships with those with whom we disagree. All right, and this is a big, big message of Pope Francis. It's a big message of Pope Francis. We cannot lose friendships or even family relationships with people we disagree with. Maybe this is timely advice as Thanksgiving comes around and we're sitting around the table with Aunt Sally and Uncle Ben, and they all have different thoughts than we do. So we have to be able, around a family table, around a circle of friends, to engage each other respectfully, allowing the person to speak, truly listening. One of the great lessons about listening I always learned is that if you are sharing your opinion with someone and you cannot count to 4 before they're responding, it means they did not hear one word you said. Because what they're doing, they're formulating their response. They're not really listening to you. So how about when you're on the other end and someone's speaking to you? Are you really listening? Or are you just waiting to them to stop so you can interject? All right, and so I think Pope Francis is doing a great job in reminding us of the need to listen, and that even around a family table or in a circle of friends, it's really okay if we disagree. It really is. But we owe each other that respect, you know? And that listening, that treating each other as family, as friends, as brothers and sisters, never means that we compromise who we are and what we believe, right? So if the only way I can be your friend is I have to pretend that I agree with you, or I dare not tell you what I think, that's not a friendship. It's truly not a friendship. And same thing with families, you know, within brothers and sisters, siblings, aunts and uncles. We have to be able to be ourselves. So that dialogue that we talk about never means compromise. Never means compromise who we are and what we believe. One of the most important ways, I think, to maintain friendships with those we disagree with is to set social media aside once in a while and engage one another in real time, like you're doing tonight, over dinner, over coffee. We must fully remember who that person is before us. Just the other day in the office, you know, I got involved. I'm sure this has happened to you in your places of business. You know, all of a sudden I'm in the middle of one of these email strings, you know, where people are, you know, going back and forth, and obviously not everyone's happy with each other, and there's like a zinger here and a zinger there and a zinger there. And I finally just called time out. We are on the same floor. You can use my meeting room. Come on down, you know, and that's what happened. I opened the door, I said, sit down, there's plenty of room, we can social distance. Stop this, because you are talking to each other in a way that you will not talk to each other in this room. You won't do that. You won't say that eyeball to eyeball. You won't. Because now you're reminded of, we're now person to person. We're actually heart to heart, right? Heart to heart, because we really ultimately do care for one another. And so I think that's a great practical tool to keep in mind, right? And you all know the rule too of when you are upset, right, and you do your email, you've heard that rule, you then leave that email for 24 hours. I actually did that the other day, to be honest with you. You know, I was really frustrated at a certain situation, and I wrote an email, and I thought it was somewhat respectful. Somewhat respectful, but because I thought it was only somewhat respectful, I just left it there. And I went the next morning, turned on the computer, I'm like, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? Thank the good Lord I did not send that, because that's not who I am. And that's not what the person on the other side deserved. And I think that's one of the challenges of social media. We have to be disciplined, and we have to be disciplined with ourselves, okay? So you all know that, right? And if I could just talk maybe just about the church throughout this pandemic. One of the things that, and again, for any of you who have lost or have witnessed loved ones suffering because of COVID-19, or God forbid, lost someone in death, you know, my sympathy to all of you. This has been very, very sad time for all of us, and I know we're worried about those that we love. So, but in this pandemic, one of the things that the church, I think, came to realize is that we have to practice social distancing. We have to make sacrifices and wear masks. And I was in a school today, and I got yelled at 3 times because the 3rd graders were following the arrows, and I was not, you know. I wasn't used to following the arrows. So they were yelling at me, which is good, because we have to make these protocols, and they're sacrifices. You know, I'm confirming young people now, and I'm wearing a mask, and they're wearing a mask, and I'm white. It's not the same, but these are sacrifices we make because we love each other. And we owe it to each other to take care of each other. But what the church had to make sure of was that there was no spiritual distancing between the church and the people, between the priests and the people. And so I am absolutely inspired and amazed of how in this diocese, and really in dioceses across this country, how our leaders, our pastors, our priests, youth ministers, directors of religious education, and all have found creative ways to keep that spiritual connectivity. And so you've seen it in lots of ways, most especially the live streaming of masses, right? Now, we've always had live streaming of masses. I mean, my grandmother, was 99, and, she was watching Mass from home, way back when. But it was always someone else. It was someone else. What now, shut-ins and those who are unable to come to Mass now, they're seeing their own priests with whom they have a relationship each week, speaking to them, being present to them. And so our priests have done a great job. Our evangelization efforts, some of the creativity of evangelization, the videos that have been done to teach, and the dialogue that has been present. Some a little too creative, I think, but very, very good, has been extraordinary. And I really think, finally, what John Paul II referred to as the new evangelization is really beginning to be realized. How do we as a church use the tools that are appropriate for us, social media, to share the truth and the gospel, and to reach out to people to whom we may have lost? Maybe really good people, but who for one way or another have wandered away from the church or who have left the church. And so what priests are seeing is that, instead of having, 300 people at Mass, we now have 1,300 people engaged in one way or another. And these are people, whether through the pandemic or not, may not have been in church. So at least we see an opportunity now, at least to perhaps connect. But you all know the challenge now. Now we have to try to explain that we need you when you're safe and when you're not compromised and when you're emotionally in a good place to come back to church. And nothing replaces being an active participant of a community and actually receiving the body and blood of the Lord. So that's the challenge that we face now. But I think, as I'm asking all the parishes in the diocese, I'm asking our young adult groups to see what we have learned at this time as far as the utilization of social media to communicate, and especially to those who have wandered away. Okay? The big responsibility of this also, as a church, is when we use social media, and I think you see in our diocese, we're pretty actively engaged on social media, with the podcasts and the videos and the Instagram and the Facebook and all those things. But the one question you always have to be asking as a church and as a parish, if you're involved in activities, okay, that's good. We got that message out. We got that word out. But what are the people going to remember? Are they going to remember the creative means I used and how clever I was? Or are they going to remember actually the message that was going to be conveyed? So our creativity, our very person, can never take priority over the message and, of course, over the one to whom we're communicating, the Lord. Okay, so that's the big challenge. Let me just finish up by asking a question that young adults ask me many times. So I'm often asked by young adults, young professionals, what can we do to help the church? And first, I would say, do not wait to be asked. Do not wait to be asked. Approach your pastor, approach your priest, and ask him, what do you need me to help you with? And I know you probably want to begin by taking whatever you're best at and apply your skills and your gifts. And that's a great gift. That's a great quality. But what I'm really suggesting to you is that there's a beauty in starting by going where the need is greatest. Not where you may be most comfortable, but where the need may be most greatest. And your pastor knows exactly where that need is greatest. And by starting this way, maybe in a way you could never have imagined yourself, in an outreach program, a service program, an educational program, you will serve Christ and his church more genuinely. and you will learn things about the church that you never, ever imagined. Some of the greatest gifts, as I was saying earlier, my priesthood and life as a bishop, came from saying yes to whatever God asked of me. I did not direct my own path, and this has brought me profound joy. I want you to be a leader, my young friends, in your parish community, but it's important for you to be willing to go where you are called and where the church has the greatest need of you and the gifts that God has blessed you. And I believe that in doing so, you will always not only bring blessings to the parish community, to the church, you will find God's abundant blessings. And that's my prayer for all of you. I do want to speak just a little bit about the two issues that I mentioned before. And certainly this election has been a time of harsh rhetoric, I would say. I think probably most of us are relieved that we don't have to watch the ads and the attack ads and all those kind of things anymore. It's a great blessing. Another blessing of this past election, though, is that so many people in an extraordinary number exercise one of the greatest blessings and gifts of living in a free country. The ability to vote, the ability to be a part of choosing our leaders. And it's a sacred duty, and it's a privilege. Up until the election, I was trying to do my best to remind the faithful, the Catholic faithful in the Diocese of Arlington, that you're not only a citizen who votes, you are to be a faithful citizen who votes. And that means that you must be informed on what the issues are. You must be informed, and again, not by just reading headlines, by doing your own research of what candidates are saying. You must be informed of what the church is teaching, and you must be prayerful. And hopefully that is the way that all of you have entered into this voting process. That prayer continues, because whether it be the election at the highest level or on the state level, winners are chosen. And sometimes it's not the way we would have wanted, it's not the way we have voted, but in the end, that prayer continues, because we must entrust all elected and re-elected officials to the Lord. We really do. Even if it's the candidate we would least vote for, we have to say, Lord, he or she are yours. We entrust them. We entrust the great responsibility of giving them to your care, so that we want your truth, your wisdom, your grace to inspire them to enact all that is good and all that is just. And that is something I think that is very, very important. It's something we need to do. We had a holy hour in the diocese before the election, Uplift Arlington, One Nation Under God. And one of the things we prayed for that holy hour was that at the end of the election, we would all be renewed in our commitment to be peacemakers. I mean, we know that right now our nation is in need of healing and unity. We know there's only one who can do that. It is the Lord. And yet he sends us to be his instruments. So in the way we speak, in the way we treat others, in the rhetoric we use, how important it is for us, how important it is for our world, our nation, to see the witness of our unity. What can we do for our nation? What better gift right now can we offer? It is up to the bishops of the country, it's up to the faithful of the church to continue to engage our elected officials on the issues that are very dear to us, namely the sacredness of life at every stage, the sanctity of marriage, and religious liberty. And so even if people who have been elected are opposed to what the church teaches and believes, our willingness to dialogue and to engage them cannot end, and it will not end by your bishops. We are constantly on the scene, behind the scene, engaging our elected officials, making our voice heard. And all of you are called to do the same, to be in contact with those who have been elected. You hear these stories about how an email that is sent and signed, or how a letter that is sent or signed, or a phone call to a representative, a congressman or woman, a senator, really has an impact, really up close. And so we cannot, in any way feel like, okay, the election is over, and so now my work is over. And so we have to keep that engagement going, okay? Just today, the other issue I wanted to speak to you about was the Theodore McCarrick report was issued. That was by the request of the bishops of the United States. So sadly, in 2018, hearing the devastating news of the sinful and evil behavior of a then cardinal of the church brought shame and sadness and embarrassment, certainly, first of all, to brother bishops, but to all the faithful who have the right to expect virtuous behavior from his leaders. To see otherwise was devastating. It was even more as devastating and very sadly to those who are victims of abuse, either as a minor or as an adult. Because when news like that comes forth, their wounds are even more exposed, and the hurt and the pain that brings to victims is just incredibly sad, and we cannot ever tire of expressing our sympathy, our prayers, and our deepest apologies for whatever happened, and to do whatever we can through prayer, through fasting, through sacrificing on behalf of our victims. So we ask the Holy See to look into the McCarrick situation. How did this happen? How was someone whose whose behavior was apparent to others continue to rise to, in a sense, quote, promote it in the church? So the Holy See certainly accepted our request and conducted a thorough investigation. So people have been asking me, for these past months and year and beyond, when is the report coming out? When's the report coming out? Well, first of all, I don't know. It's the Holy See's report. And what we have learned is that the investigation was thorough. All right, and that's what an investigation is. It has to allow for due process. And when you start an investigation, if any of you are involved in human resources or personnel work, you know what happens. You interview one person if there's a conflict, and then all of a sudden, we didn't know that. We didn't know that person was involved. And then it's just like peeling the onion, and it just gets like, wow, this is going to be so much more expansive than we have ever anticipated. And I think that's really what happened with this report. So we're looking at a 450-page report filled with footnotes. So the investigation was carried out. It is very thorough. It just came out at 8 o'clock this morning. So I'll be transparent with you. I had a school visit today and an afternoon of interviews and commitments. So I've only read the executive summary, which is about 15 pages. But what is clear is certainly tragically recounted. The behavior, the church, the Holy See has been extremely painfully transparent. It is painful to read. So the transparency there is mention of how the process used to nominate and transfer bishops is conducted, with some misinformation maybe perhaps that wrongly influence some decisions. And then there is, certainly an accountability to review that whole process. The suggestion that I heard that seems to make most sense is before you form critical or definitive opinions or insights, it is suggested that you read the whole report. That if you just try to pick from this section or this headline from some other news source, you would not be as well informed as you should be to have your opinions. So it is suggested that if you're invested in this, as I think we all should be, that you read the entire report, which obviously will take some time. One of the biggest questions I've already have heard a number of times is, how do we know that there is not another McCarrick out there, right? And that's a real question. It's a scary question that we even have to ask it. And so what has changed so that will not happen again? We often have spoken to you that since 2002, since the abuse crisis became known to us, the implementation, the protocols, the procedures that the church has put into place, which are all available on our website, are thorough. And really, as a church, we have done so much to do what is our best efforts to make sure that no child, no person is ever abused again. But those review of those policies, the procedures, we can never stop looking at it. You don't reach a point where, okay, now we figure this out. You're constantly evaluating this. We're doing surveys, we're doing research, to the extent that they're working. But what was lacking in 2002 on was that the procedures and the protocols were set to help prevent the abuse of minors as it applies to clergy, priests and deacons. But it was still nothing specific about bishops, because bishops are entrusted with the care of the diocese. I don't report to the Archbishop of Washington, right? I don't report to the Archbishop of Baltimore. As it is in the Catholic Church, I am the shepherd of this diocese, and I report to the Holy See, right? So, well, that seems not to hold lots of accountability. What about if I have a problem where I notice some behavior or some grave concern from my bishop? What do? Go to the head of the diocese? It's he. Why would I do that, right? So Pope Francis wisely in 2018 in a document, Vos Estis, has put together a third party, and the bishops of course affirmed this, a third party reporting system. Whereas anyone in any diocese has a concern about a bishop and his behavior can go right to this third party system, make their complaint known. It does not go to the bishop or to another bishop. It goes to a third party system utilized, and then the investigation from the third party system begins at work there. So every complaint or any concern would be observed, and now it applies directly to bishops also. And so, God willing, that helps to answer the question, how can we be assured that there is not another situation like that? So this is, I have to say, getting ready for this report, I found myself preparing for it. But I was preparing for it is like, okay, I got to read it. I got to read the executive summary. I got to get a statement out. I got to make sure the statement is, accurate. I got to make sure the statement's, and I was approaching it like work. But today, reading the executive summary and then talking about it on my podcast, be honest, it became very emotional. It's not just a text. It's just not a document. It is a sad reality in the life of our church in a very dark moment. It's embarrassing. It's shameful. And my heart is especially going out to all the victims who have experienced this horrific, unspeakable behavior. So I think, perhaps tonight, after the emotions of this day for all of us in the Catholic Church, I think perhaps the best thing that we can do is to entrust with renewed faith our need for healing, our need for vigilance and improvement to the Lord. Trusting that, Lord, this is yours. This is your church. You've entrusted to human beings, and throughout its history we have failed you, but you have never failed us. And your promise that nothing will destroy your church is something we have to believe, and we hand this all over to you and help us to begin anew. So if you could join me before you retire tonight in that prayer for the church, for all victims, and for the healing that's so necessary, I would be grateful knowing that solidarity that is ours. Okay? So lots of things, Nero. We did communications. We did how young adults can be active and contribute to the life of their parish and church. We did the election. We did the McCarrick report. That's a lot.
What else do you want?
Yeah, that's it.
Covered it all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bishop Burbidge. Thank you so much. Before we begin with our Q&A, I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question for Bishop Burbidge, both if you're here or if you're watching us from the live stream, please text 703-829-5279. There should be on your tables and also on the screen for you guys. If you send your questions there, we'll be able to ask them. First of all, I just really want to thank you. Like, just as a young adult myself, 2020 has just been a time of so many ideas, and it's been kind of hard to be able to decipher and filter out, like, what's real, what's true, and everyone wants to tell you what to believe. But honestly, every time you've released a statement or I've even been able to speak to you, I could just trust you. I could just trust that you were speaking the truth. And I really want to thank you, because that's a real anchor for us as young adults right now in this very confusing time. So thank you. And also, I really want to thank you for trusting us. I just felt like you were speaking throughout this talk about your trust, the church's trust for young adults to be able to seek truth, and really challenging us to continue to do that, to see us as leaders, because I've heard this from so many other young adults as well, that oftentimes it's easy to be to feel like we're seen as kids.
Right.
You know, we're not fully adults yet,
Right.
but we're also not exactly kids. But we know, like, we are really trying to be adults. So thank you for recognizing that within us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So now we want to move into the question and answer. Okay. This is a
You're
little
going to start
bit.
with a hard one or an easy one?
I hope this is an easy one for
right.
you. This is from Franny. It says, Uncle Mike, can you say goodnight to grandniece Sophie? She needs to go to bed and won't until you say goodnight. Also, go Eagles.
All right. Sophie, Uncle Mike is saying goodnight to you. I love you. And all my friends want to say goodnight to you, too. Good night, Sophie.
Good night, Sophie.
You would love my nephew. He is a real character, let me tell you.
That's great. All right, so the first question that I have for you. All right. What does just say yes to God look like to you in your daily life?
Yeah. Surrender. You know, just to know you're not in control. And for me, it depends on our personalities, I guess, right? So that's a sacrifice for me. So it's sacrificial also. You know, I'm more of a personality. I see something has to be done and I want to do it. And I don't sometimes let go and just say, I'll give you my best effort, Lord, but this is in your hand. And so the yes is a constant reminder to myself. It's always reminding myself of something. You would hope by now it would be routine, but I still have to, that yes is a constant reminder to let go.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful advice. Thank you. I once heard that Christianity is the most difficult thing until the point of surrender.
Right.
And then it's the easiest. So.
It's the easiest.
That's amazing. All right. What was your favorite bakery in Philadelphia as a kid? I know you wanted a softball, but
You wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know it. It's called Jaquette's, and they had the best donuts possible. You know?
Really?
So I'm not a big sweet guy, so that's not too bad.
Was there a particular flavor of donut within Duquette's that you remember?
Jelly, of course.
Chocolate?
Jelly.
Oh, jelly. Awesome. All right, Your Excellency. Should self-proclaimed pro-abortion politicians be excommunicated from the Catholic Church?
Yeah, so that's a question we hear a lot, right? And here's the job, here's the responsibility of a bishop. A bishop, the last possible thing you want to do is to excommunicate someone, right? That's not what the Lord was about. The Lord was about going out to sinners, going out to those who did terrible things and trying to bring them back. So you don't begin with, if you do this, then I will have nothing ever to do with you again. All right? And so it is essential for bishops to speak the truth without compromise, but to speak it in love. And when you have public officials who, because of their platform, are vocal and profess to be Catholic and do the opposite and create scandal, that requires conversation. And it requires conversation from that politician's bishop, and that individual. And I can assure you, those conversations occur. And they're not easy conversations. And what you really would try to do, two things. One is, let's not give up that this heart cannot be changed or transformed. And let's inspire about this truth, whether it be the sanctity of life or the sanctity of marriage, so this person may understand this in a new way. If that does not happen, and there is a complete rejection of it, then you have to help the person to understand that at this time, you have separated yourself from the church. It's not necessarily a formal act of excommunication. That, for some people who's cold-hearted, that's not even going to mean anything. But you have to convince that person, you, by this act, have separated yourself from the church. Doesn't mean the door is not open. Doesn't mean we're not going to be here to welcome you back. But as of now, and so therefore you should not be presenting yourself for communion because you're not in union. That's what communion is, right? That you're in union with the church and with Jesus himself. And you really convince that person not to do that, to prevent scandal and also for his or her own well-being. So it is constantly an ongoing dialogue, and it really has to take place between the bishop and that politician. And every bishop will tell you we've had those conversations, and they're not easy. Usually what you hear all the time, not all the time, I shouldn't say that, but usually what you hear is, and it's flawed, this is flawed thinking, but because of the way this person was formed, and sometimes you feel badly that this person was just formed the wrong way, whether it be in Catholic schools even, or religious education program, or Catholic universities, that they think because I am personally against this, and I will never do this personally, but I am representing the people who've elected me, therefore I am not in this state of mortal sin. So it's flawed thinking, and now you got to work and re-educate the person of why that is flawed thinking.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that response. All right, next question. Who is your favorite saint?
I have a couple favorite saints. So my patron is St. Michael the Archangel, right? So I love St. Michael the Archangel. We need him more than ever, don't we? Protecting us. And my confirmation name is Francis of Assisi, so they're my two favorites.
All right, not a question, but a grateful heart. Thank you for streaming. Also, thank you for going to Lost Rhino. It brings this ministry to other locations. So thank you for making that trek all the way from Arlington and coming out here. And thanks for all of you guys for showing up for this. All right. Does Bishop Burbidge have any recommendations of good ways to continue preventing abortion? I usually give to organizations like the Gabriel Network, but recently it's felt like I need to do more.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, again, I think we all share that responsibility to protect all of human life, especially those most vulnerable, the unborn. And so our prayer is number one, right? Our prayer for the unborn. Our witness, I think our witness on behalf of the unborn. I know many of you, and I've joined some of you in witnessing outside of abortion clinics, praying the rosary, And we do that peacefully, right? Because we have the truth. You know, the people, I'm sure any of you have done this, have been the recipient of very harsh, vicious comments of people driving by and things that were being shouted. I remember my former diocese, one of the abortion clinics we prayed at was right in a university campus. And many of the college students were not on the same page as we were. And I heard some of the fierce attacks and vicious words ever. And I prayed for them because the anger was just, the rage was unbelievable. But we who were praying were peaceful. We were serene because we have the truth. If you have the truth, you can always be peaceful, right? And so I think praying for that. I think the way also is we cannot always be the angry ones, we who are pro-life. We're anger at an evil and injustice, and we should be. Evil and injustice should always make us anger. But if we have the gospel of life and the truth, we should be reflecting that joy that comes from being such a believer. And then I think the other way you do it is you have to, not by bragging, you know, Catholics, we're very humble. And we don't, because we do it for God, we do it for others, but we don't like telling people what we do. But sometimes I think we need to. And so I think we have to impress upon people how we're at the service of life, how the Catholic Church is always there for moms and dads who chose abortion. Project Rachel, one of the most powerful ministries in the church, who welcome people who have made the decision of abortion for healing and to spend a weekend at retreat. They've been some of the most powerful experiences I've had as a priest. There's the church. Yes, you made a very horrific decision, and I don't know the reasons that you did and where you were in your life at that point, but we're here. We're here for you. What we do as a Catholic Church in service of single moms. I just visited St. Margaret Katona. We're home for single moms. These courageous women who chose life, even though they were alone. They didn't have their husband or the father of the child abandon them, and no place to go. Well, we're providing housing, we're providing education, clothing, and all for them. Project Gabriel, helping young moms, you know, with the expense of having children, you know, whether it be diapers or food or whatever. I think we allow people to know, if you choose life, we as a church will be here for you. Choose life. We'll be here to help you. So it's not just our protesting, which is important, right? It's not just our witnessing, it's not just our prayers, and we're here to help you. And we can be very proud as Catholics, and we can be very proud in the Diocese of Arlington and our Catholic charities to how we are also at the service of life. And the stories are beautiful of people who said, because I knew that help was there, I chose life. I think I've told you, maybe you've heard that the powerful story of prayer, witness in Manassas, outside an abortion clinic for many years. Faithful people praying week in and week out outside of an abortion clinic. You know, sometimes you think, I'm doing all this prayer, I'm doing all this witnessing. Is it ever making a difference? And in God's miraculous way, you know what that is now, that abortion clinic? Divine Mercy Clinic. It's providing health care to the poor and to the needy. That building where life was taken is now Divine Mercy. So we never underestimate what God will do with our efforts, with our witness, and with our goodness.
Any advice for young adults who want to get involved in politics, but also know politics is a human institution and flawed?
Right. Yeah, I think if you have an interest and a passion and the grit that would be necessary, go for it. We need in our nation politicians who are believers, who are faithful, who know that they're God's servant first. St. Thomas More, the patron of our diocese, right? God's servant first. And we see, don't we see? We see some young leaders coming forth who are being really courageous and who are going against the crowd to be who they are and to bring their voice into the public arena. If you do that, you're going to have to be very courageous. You're going to be very courageous because you will suffer. We see it so often that if you are, promoting the sanctity of life, sanctity of marriage, you're going to be labeled, you're going to be called names, you're going to be attacked. And I know a number of politicians who recently have gone through those battles. And they said they would do it all over again, even though they lost. They would do it all over again because they at least got the conversation going. They at least got a different perspective out there. So if God is putting that in your heart, please take it seriously.
Great. I got one last question for you. What is the best thing young adults can do to continue to form themselves as faithful Catholics?
I see it happening across our diocese in a number of ways. The one thing I think young adults are bringing to our church is the sense of community, right? At least this is my understanding. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't think young adults are looking only for major events, where let's have 400 young adults together at a field house or an arena or something like that. That's a good thing to do, but it's not enough. I think young adults are saying, we need communion, we need community. And so I see within young adults small groups forming, where small groups are forming to pray together, to talk about their faith, to talk about it on an intimate level, to engage each other, and really to know each other and to support each other in the faith. I think that is just a tremendous thing that is happening. It's happening actually in our seminaries too. Our seminarians who are forming priests, they have these small groups within the seminary to take the level, to take the engagement, the conversation of the faith, to a deeper level, which is really, really good. We know it's social. We know the intellectual pieces. There's so many things available intellectually. I think are so many good pieces out there. Your priest can recommend what the series are and things like that. But I think the small groups, young adults, men and women of faith, engaging other men and women of faith and helping each other to grow in their love of the Lord, that's what's going to catch fire.
Awesome. Thank you. Before we move on, I just want to take a quick moment to thank everybody that's watching via live stream right now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We have heard from so many of you that it's hard to feel connected right now. And I know that Bishop Burbidge has encouraged you today that you are not abandoned. We are so pleased to be able to live stream this for you as a way to reach you. And hopefully Bishop Burbidge's words has been a reflection of Christ to you and has reached you in some way. So thank you for joining us. And normally, we're going to clap here, but I want you to start first. All right, you clap for Bishop Burbidge while we sit here awkwardly for a second, right? All right, they're clapping in their pajamas and stuff. Now let's all thank Bishop Burbidge.
Thanks a lot, everyone. If I'll be hanging around a little bit. If anyone wanted to just ask me something, feel free. It'd be fine. Thanks.
And so I just want to say a few things before we go. You guys don't leave either. Yeah, I have some words for you as well. We are not just a diocesan ministry, right? My name is Nero De Silva. I'm the coordinator of young adult ministry for the diocese, but we're really a network of ministries throughout these different parishes. There are real communities, real friendships being formed in our very many parishes throughout the diocese, and we want to connect you with that. And so please, you can connect with us on the website or follow at Arlington Yam, either on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we will help to connect you with those parish communities so that you can really have those real friendships, those real connections that we know that you guys are really longing for. young adult ministry. For you guys that are here, there's little papers on the tables that you guys can connect with in order to figure out how to connect with us. And I just want to kind of reiterate what Bishop Burbidge said about those people that have left, right? We as young adults, there's now more young adults that have disaffiliated from the faith than there are people who claim it. And Bishop Burbidge was talking about this. And it's really been something that's been on our entire team's heart. Like, how are we going to reach those people? Because the things that we've been doing just haven't been capturing them. And one thing that I want to invite all of you guys here to, all of you watching online, is this event called TBG. For you guys that are online, you can see it, the little infographic. This is an event, it's called TBG, stands for Truth, Beauty, Goodness, right? Lots of things when we throw out these words, even Catholic or Jesus or church, these people that have disaffiliated don't want to hear it. They already think that they know what it means. But we know from the Catechism that truth, beauty, goodness are the perfections of creation. These are the things that appeal to the human heart, no matter what. And that's what we want to platform as a way. The Catechism says that when you look at those things, you can actually name the Creator. And that's what we're doing. We have this event. We're going to do it on Monday, next Monday, at 6:30 at Tucked Away Brewery in Manassas. And at this event, we have a food truck. There's live music with like jazz folk, local musician. His name is Aaron Bruce. We'll also have a testimony by a Christendom grad. And we have an artist, Donia McManus, who started school in Firenze. He's amazing. He's going to be doing an art display. So this is really just a casual way. And I encourage all of you guys to consider coming out next Monday, 6:30, and not just to come, but to make that invitation, to go out and talk to that person that God has put on your heart. But maybe every other avenue that you've had to invite them to something has just been too intimidating, either for you or for them. I encourage you, pray for them and make that ask. So thank you so much. And also for all of you guys, we want to express a huge thank you to Lost Rhino, to Stephanie, to Matthew, and to our server, Amanda, here tonight. Thank you so much. Please show them love in the tips. It is huge for us to be here. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all. We'll see you later.